What is the best manga to start with if you've never read manga before? The easy answer is obviously just pick one of your favorite anime, but obviously you're gonna need some recommendations after that. So for everyone who is starting out as a manga fan, I've picked 5 different manga. Each of these offers something unique and was picked with the intention to help you get into different kinds of manga. So even if you've been reading manga for a while but you're looking for something to help you branch out, these recommendations should be exactly what you're looking for. And on that note, the first manga I'm gonna recommend is One Punch Man. So, why did I pick One Punch Man? Well, there's a couple reasons. If you've never heard of One Punch Man, it's basically a parody of all the big battle shonen like Dragon Ball that takes place in a world of superheroes. The big reason I picked this manga as the first recommendation is because in my experience, it's basically a guaranteed gateway drug. A few years ago, I was begging my friend to get into anime. He said, "Oh, it's just not for me, it's too weird, it's too cartoony." The second I got him to watch One Punch Man, he was already asking me for more recommendations. And in case you're wondering, yes, that effect does translate to the manga. While the first season of One Punch Man's anime has god-tier animation, the manga is illustrated by arguably the best artist in manga. Not only is Yusuke Murata's art gorgeous, but it's also this perfect blend of newer-looking manga and some of the classics. Specifically, he tends to draw a lot like Akira Toriyama, who made Dragon Ball. So by reading One Punch Man, not only will you get a battle shonen that's just as flashy as some of the newer manga like My Hero or JJK, but you will also get an appreciation for the older style of manga. And from there, that should help you get into all the great manga of the 80s that are all too neglected. Finally, the last reason I picked One Punch Man is that it's easily accessible. You'll notice that for all of these manga, except for one of them, you can buy the physical volumes in English and read the new chapters online. So if you want to read One Punch Man, the easiest way will be to go to viz.com, get the subscription for $2 a month, and then you can read all of their manga online, including One Punch Man. But maybe you're sick of superheroes and you're looking for more of a fantasy type of story. Well, that is why my second recommendation is going to be Shangri-La Frontier. Shangri-La Frontier is basically a story about a gamer who likes to beat broken games. A new MMORPG called Shangri-La Frontier comes out, but when the main character tries the game, his character is instantly cursed by one of the game's main bosses. Now, there are a ton of manga and light novels already that capture the fantasy video game experience, but none of them fully capture the experience quite like Shangri-La Frontier does. Reading Shangri-La Frontier reminded me exactly what it was like back in the day to pick up a game like Destiny or World of Warcraft, to be dropped in this brand new world, to explore it, and to want to spend every hour you have figuring out how it works. In particular, this manga does a perfect job of reflecting the social experience of these kinds of games, as well as the raids. There's one boss fight later in the manga that I guarantee will make you feel that rush you felt the last time you and some friends fought a boss. Now, like I said, there's 2 manga that aren't as accessible, and one of them is this one. Shangri-La Frontier is published by Kodansha Comics, so unfortunately it won't be available with that Viz subscription. If you are interested and you'd like to support the official release, then you can buy the first 8 volumes in their ebook versions online right now. So now you've read a big battle shonen, and you've read Shangri-La Frontier, so you're all set to get into the video game and isekai manga. At this point, your best bet is to start branching out into comedy manga. And my recommendation as far as that goes is Akane Banashi. Actually, before I do that, make sure to like the video if you've been enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. But now let's get back to Akane Banashi. Akane Banashi is about a girl named Akane who wants to become a professional rakugoka. Rakugo is basically a traditional form of Japanese comedies told by one speaker. Akane's father tries out for a promotion, but he's mysteriously outcast by the villain of the series. So the story follows Akane as she and other characters perform these stories, and she tries to avenge her father by becoming a great rakugoka. Now, like I said, these stories rely on one person. That person has to narrate and act out all of the different characters. This actually works out really well in this manga because Akane does a fantastic job of acting everyone out. In fact, because this is a manga, Akane will actually imitate the character she is acting out to the point where she almost looks exactly like them, making Akane Banashi one of the most visually expressive manga you will ever read. On top of that, this comedy is also one of the most intense manga you'll ever read, even when you compare it to battle shonen. You find yourself at the edge of your seat during the performances just like a member of the audience. And the mystery behind behind the villain and why he did what he did to Akane's father makes Akane Banashi insanely addicting. I had never heard about it, but everyone said it was one of the best new manga. So I picked it up and binged the whole thing in about one afternoon. It was just that good. Fortunately, if you do have that Viz subscription, you can binge all of it right now. And since it's still pretty new, you can have that experience of following the manga from the beginning, reading it each week for a couple of years, and then reading that last chapter when it finally ends. On top of all that, it's just a great way to get into comedy manga, so that way you'll be more interested in some of the classics like Gintama, Assassination Classroom, and of course, Bo-Bo-Bo-Bo-Bo-Bo-Bo. Okay, so now you've got a battle shonen, you've got a fantasy, and you've got a comedy. But what about your friends that want to get you into romance manga like Fruits Basket? Well, if you've only seen anime like Naruto and Bleach and you can't imagine yourself ever getting into romance, then my next recommendation for you is going to be Kaguya-sama Love is War. I was probably just like you. I watched all the Shonen Jump stuff. I saw all the mainstream anime. But I heard people talking about how insanely funny Kaguya-sama is, and so I was like, you know what? Let me give the anime a try. After about 2 episodes of the anime, I was sold. And now I'm in the process of catching up on the manga. Kaguya-sama is about this girl, Kaguya, and this boy, Shirogane, who are clearly in love with each other, but they both want the other person to admit it. So each chapter essentially involves one of them hatching a scheme to get the other to admit their love, only for one of their friends or something else to mess it up before things go horribly wrong. Naturally, that recipe for disaster makes Kaguya-sama just as funny as it is romantic. Personally, while I love comedies, I don't really laugh at books all that often, yet I constantly find myself laughing out loud when I read this, and I'm sure you'll be doing it too. But like I said, this is a romance. While you get into Kaguya-sama for the comedy, you stay for the great characters and romantic drama. That game of will they won't they hooks you in until you're invested in the relationship between the two main characters. Before you know it, some of the side characters even get their own love interests. And suddenly, you're reading Kaguya-sama to watch all of your favorite characters finally end up together. And that is why I cannot recommend Kaguya-sama enough. It's one of the funniest manga you will ever read, but it's also just a great romance, and a great romance manga for those of you who normally wouldn't read this kind of story. Like I said, I started out with the anime, but I would definitely read the manga. Not only will you get the story as it was originally drawn, but as is true with all manga, you'll be able to binge the whole story much faster than watching the anime, especially now that the manga just ended. Finally, if you're looking to start a manga collection, then this would be a great place to start because these covers are gorgeous. But now that I've recommended 2 popular series, 1 brand new series, and 1 romance, you're probably expecting me to recommend some super niche one. And you would be wrong because my last recommendation is of course Dragon Ball. I mean, come on, did you really expect anything else? It's Dragon Ball, one of the most iconic franchises of all time. Of course this should be one of the first manga you read. I actually had it as my first recommendation, but I opened with One Punch Man since it's a bit more modern. Obviously, one of the reasons I have to recommend Dragon Ball is because of how influential it is. If you're reading just about anything in Weekly Shonen Jump, or any battle shonen type story, then Dragon Ball is likely going to have some influence over that story. From the transformations, the fights and choreography, the story arcs and how they're structured, and a lot of the common tropes. So if you really want to get into manga, then it's better to read Dragon Ball early on, so then you can see how it inspired manga after it, like the big 3. On a similar note, you should also read Dragon Ball for the art. In his own book on manga, Hirohiko Araki, who is the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, says that in order to become a great manga creator, you have to study other manga, and he specifically points out Akira Toriyama as one of the greats. There's a bunch of reasons Dragon Ball is as popular as it is today, and a lot of it is because of how talented Toriyama is as an artist. And that's why I made sure to include One Punch Man, because Murata, one of the best artists out right now, was heavily inspired by Toriyama's art style. And like I said, you can see it when you compare some of the stuff from One Punch Man and Dragon Ball. It just goes to show that this style of manga is clearly something people love, which is why you owe it to yourself to check it out. And on top of all that, it's just a great story. Obviously it has great fights, but it's also really funny and really emotional. I mean, there's a reason people still watch Dragon Ball Super and buy all the video games. It's because decades later, people still love the characters. That is why, if you're going to get into manga, Dragon Ball is a must-read for anyone. Fortunately, like the other Viz series, you can read it all online right now, and since it's been around for a while, it should be pretty easy to get physical volumes at your local bookstores or comic book stores. But those are my 5 recommendations. Like I said, I tried to give you a handful of different kinds of manga, so that by the end of them, you'll be motivated to start reading all kinds of different manga. But now I'd like to hear your recommendations. What manga do you think are best to start with? Which manga would you recommend to me? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another manga recommendation, then make sure to check out my video on Gachi Akata. In that video, I explain why you should read what everyone is calling the next big manga, even though it might get cancelled. You can find it in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.